Hello and welcome everyone, Andy Bryan here from The Soul Pathway. And today within this interview we are going to be speaking about sacred femininity, what it is, how you can embody it, and also how you can work through some of the traumas so that you can really step into that place. And I have an amazing lady here today to speak about sacred femininity, what it's all about, and really what it means to you so that you can really ascend into higher levels of consciousness and truly be who you are. So Katie, tell me a bit more about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Sure. You make me do the hard work, huh? My name is, kids read my bio. No, I'm just kidding. My name is Katie Kozlowski, and I am a spiritual trainer and a master energy coach, which is a fancy way of saying that I teach you how to work with energy and how you embody your energy. I have created a system called Shakti Bomb, which is a transformational system that works with feminine energy to create shifts, to create healing, and to teach you how to manifest from the inside out. I have been doing this for quite some time. I have been behind the scenes doing the work myself. I am a practitioner of the process first, and then I decided it was time to teach it. So this is something that has been my personal journey as well as my professional journey, and I'm really excited to be here.
Love it, and thank you very much for being here. It's really a pleasure. I followed your work for some time, and I do believe, from watching, your posts on Instagram and seeing what you're sharing online as a whole, that you really do embody that place, which I think really is important when it comes to sharing this work, because a lot of people speak about this online, and it's no discredit to anybody that's sharing this, but from looking at your work, I do feel like you really do embody that sacred femininity. So it'd be really great to dive into this subject, explore it, and really think about how women and men, because I think it's important for both of us, step into that sacred femininity and honor who we truly are, because I know from your website that you're all about stepping into your true self as well, which is beautiful.
Yeah, no, I am. I'm all about it. I'm about it because it's something that obviously I struggled with, and it was the thing that allowed me to transform my own struggles. So I thought, well, I should talk about this and talk about it in a really honest, authentic way. So to be able to share the journey and share the tools and the teachings is it's like super exciting for me. So I'm delighted and I'm honored, and I think that it's funny because Instagram, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, but Instagram has been a challenge for me because it's imagery, it's photographs matched up with writing, and it's been really interesting to watch my own evolution of my own perception of what the embodiment of feminine is. And I'm sure we'll talk about this more, but it's been really fun to use Instagram as a medium to kind of like put it together, because I, like everyone else, was really confused, going, well, so what does it mean to embody feminine energy? Do you know what I mean? And I think it can be really confusing for people. So
Definitely, and I'd like to start off with finding out a bit more about your journey and where you began this, so then we can dive into what people can do to explore their own sacred femininity in terms of, how they can heal, how they can love themselves, and honoring who they truly are.
No, totally. Yeah, I mean, my journey is quite long and quite short, all in one. It's it can be truncated to like a very simple story, and so I'm one of those people, like so many men and women walking around today. I grew up in what was technically a loving family, but there was a lot of struggles around me. There was alcoholism, there were suicides. My grandmother was in a coma, brain tumor. Like, there was a lot of stuff happening, and so it wasn't anybody's fault. It was just kind of like the nature of the environment I grew up in was chaotic and stressful, and I think starting at a young age, I was very confused about love. And so what ended up happening is I grew up, I became an actress and performer and singer, and all of that work was very much about, the external, like, showman, very much about looks, very much about sort of like talent, but talent in a very kind of objectified way. And so I went along my journey, and then I ended up really struggling because I had this like I had this inner voice that was like, no, but there's more, you know, you don't want to just settle for people liking you for who you are on the outside. And I always felt this sort of like inner turmoil because I really knew that I was worth more, but I wasn't really getting it. Then that rolled into you know, dating issues and issues with men, and a lot of sexual assault, and you know, there was a bunch of that started in my teens and rolled through, and so I had this like sort of perfect storm of struggles. And what ended up happening is I actually got hit by a taxi. I got hit by a taxi when I was 29 years old. I was working as a spokesmodel, and the taxi was kind of that big awakening moment for me, because I wouldn't say I hit rock bottom, meaning like the world didn't fall out from underneath me. I wasn't like lying in a ditch or anything like that. But what happened was, you know, that was when I literally got hit by a car, and it hit me so hard, this realization of the fact that like I wasn't treating myself as if I mattered. I wasn't loving myself. I was kind of doing the antithesis of that. And that's when I went on this journey to kind of figure out, not just to like learn how to love myself, because that was obviously the most important thing, but beyond that, I've always been I've been like a solution driven person. Like I want to know, I don't just want to fix the problem. I want to know why it happened in the first place, so it never happens again. So I started studying, and I found a guru, and I did spiritual training, and I learned NLP, and I did all these different things to come to where I am now, which is not only the self-love and the embodiment and all of that and the self-acceptance, but to really understand kind of like the mechanics and the psychology of how is it possible that we could get ourselves into such a space that we don't love ourselves, that we don't accept ourselves, we don't know who we are. Like, what's the beef behind that? And that's why I'm here now. And that's why I am the person I am today, because all those things happened. But also I took it's been about 10 years now that I've been working on this, and I've been studying this and working with teachers and healers, and like really, really getting down to the core of what this is about, and making it simple and relatable so that people can actually take action. Like I never wanted it to be like, dear God, please save me. And if you don't, I don't know what I'll do. I was like, God, we're going to work together, right? So that's kind of why I'm here. And that's why I teach the way I teach, is because I want to empower people to know how to take control of their lives and not just be dependent on somebody else. Like there's nothing worse than waiting for somebody else to love you, to feel like, you know, lovable.
Definitely. And for me, like when we think about this spiritual journey, I think in many ways that's what it's all about, taking full ownership and getting to the rawness of who we are and learning to love all those aspects, you know, which is the beauty of everything. And when you speak about your awakening experience, which I think was interesting, not that you got hit by the taxi, but you could say that was a metaphorical or symbolic hit as well, you know, because it opened up your world to exploring new ways of being. But you know, I love what you said about, like, it's not about the external, you know, look and feel of an individual. It's really about that internal connection, and that connection with the soul. And for me, like, we can say that it's about that other individual, which in many ways it is, you know, we know that as well, but it's also that incredible relationship they have with self, isn't it? Which makes it beautiful.
You need that. You need that. I mean, I think that was sort of like my biggest aha awakening moment, was when I realized how much of my self-worth was dependent on others, dependent on booking the job, dependent on the guy liking me or not, dependent on, you know, if somebody liked my dress or not. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it was so deeply embedded. And we're talking about the feminine even more so than anything, I think that the feminine got really super wrapped up in like needing to be needed, and if you weren't needed, or if you weren't loved, or if you weren't adored, like if you weren't playing that part, then who are you? Like that was at least my experience, was when I stepped away from all of that, I was terrified, because I was like, okay, so if I'm not going to be the dutiful, doting, arm candy wife, whatever, and I'm choosing this other path, like, what do I do with that? Because it's so, it's like a nebulous space of emptiness. Like, it's just not defined. Like, we don't have resources for carving your own path to worth, which is weird. It's kind of weird.
Definitely. Well, for me, like when I put together the soul pathway process, it birthed from the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's work, which was incredibly beautiful. I studied that for about 10 years, and I got to so much depth with it, and it became a part of me. But for me, I use that as somewhat of a roadmap for people to understand themselves and their own journey, which I think is essential. But we digress slightly. I don't want to talk so much about that, but let's jump straight in. So we spoke, briefly before this, and we spoke about, what the divine feminine is, or sacred feminine. And I remember mentioning the fact that there's so many different versions of it out there, and I think in some ways it's become distorted over the years, and we really need to find out what that means again. And like I said at the beginning of this interview, I do believe you've come to a place where you're really embodying that. So first and foremost, I want to ask, what does it really mean to embody? What is sacred femininity, and what does it mean to embody that?
Well, that's a loaded question. I think it's just very complex. It's very simple, and it's very complex. I think that when we speak of the feminine, right? The feminine to me is, first of all, it's multifaceted, right? So there's all these different flavors and like colors of the rainbow. I think the feminine is every sacred feminine is about compassion and creativity and kindness and love and strength. It's sensual, and yeah, it's sexual in a way, but I think of it as a very like elevated intelligence when I teach the feminine, and when I teach Shakti, and I teach when I work with women and men, right? I'm seeing this as like, let's elevate this from sort of it's not a cheap sexuality. It's an elegance, it's a refinement. And so when I think about the sacred feminine, it really is that kind of return to the essence, like the unique essence. Everybody's different, but we all have this inherent brilliance, and it is pure, and it is beautiful, and it's like it's delicious, it's sensual, it's yummy, but it's not cheap in any way, shape, or form. There's no objectification. We'll just put it that way. There's no objectification in the purity of the feminine, at least from my experience.
Love it. And the word that shone out for me there is one we spoke about at the beginning as well, is elegance. The elegance of you, because, and I speak about archetypes a lot as well, and it's interesting you spoke about the return of self, and I think in some ways the return of innocence comes to mind for me, because I spoke about like the inner child coming out, stepping back to that beautiful inner child that where we could be playful, we can be ourselves again, where we can just love from that space of non-judgment,
right.
And you may be wondering what that means anyway. What does loving from a place of non-judgment mean? But
right.
So
no, I get that. It's funny, when I was like, there are certain things that have stood out to me over the years. It makes sense that I am who I am now, and that I do what I do, and that I created this system and everything. Because when I think about the kinds of things that have always stood out to me, there's a song by Enigma called Return to Innocence. And Like,
Yeah.
I heard that song. It was in like a Disney movie. It was in like some weird, I forget what the movie was called. It was like something from the 80s or the 90s, right? And it was like, you know, they played it at the end, and I remember hearing it, and I loved it so much. And I was like, yes, I love that. Return to Innocence. What does that mean? And to this day, I love that message. And I think that it's like, of course, there's a purity within all of us, and it is the inner child. And I do think that that's sort of like the sacred feminine is that, if you think about it, we're all born from the sacred feminine, right? So anybody that came through, anyone that was born because you had to come through the birth canal, or I guess C-section, right? So maybe not, but you were still in the womb. If the mother was carrying the shame, right, then the baby would have the shame. So like, we created this, no matter what, doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, feeling this sense of shame. And I think that the innocence is the purity of just that. Like, the soul is pure innocence. It's joy, it's love.
Yeah.
I don't think that there's any shame in that. And I think that when you're trying to get back to the state of sort of like, if you want to return yourself to your natural state, and I do speak about like the return to the self, the return to your natural state, right?
Yeah.
Your true essence.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is. It's your pure, unadulterated essence before all the shit was heaped on you. And the feminine is always that, because you think about like the mother. It's funny, I'm wearing blue today. Like the mother holding her baby, like unconditional love. Unconditional love.
Definitely, and again, that's incredibly beautiful, and I think as a man, when I feel like I've had a beautiful rebirth, you know, in recent months, you know, and it's been quite a remarkable experience, like stepping into that beautiful unconditional love, you know, and being non-judgmental to others as well, like completely. You know, there's no judgment there. It's quite a surreal thing, I find, you know, when you step into that place, because it's like, I honor and love you for you, you know, regardless of your experience, what you've gone through. But one of the important things for me, obviously, is the fact that I do honor and love you for you, but also at the same time, if you are not being authentic in you, I'd love for you to find and create that space to be who you are. You know? And there's no judgment from that, but it's just like, I want you to grow and evolve into that beautiful space, because I know that it's within you, if that makes sense, you know.
Yeah. Well, and having the ability to kind of have the slate wiped clean, sort of. I think that like one of the, you know, because I work with breaking patterns, and I work with helping people clear their deep-seated trauma and pain, and like at the end of the day, that's what I do. It's like I clean up the deep junk, the bad, and the really stinky infection of the soul. I'm like, got it, no worries, I'm on it. I'm really good at it. And I'm really good at it because there's a couple things, right? Because I have so much of this feminine, and the feminine is like non-judgmental, really loving, accepting, and there's something about that energy, that consciousness, that allows people to open up. It's very, you know, for a long time I couldn't explain it. I just knew that it worked. And it's like, when you come from that space, that super feminine space, something magical happens within a person, and they open up, the subconscious opens up, and the infection, so to speak, right, like the wound, it kind of just comes up on its own, because there's no resistance, there's no fear. And that's what has allowed me to create a lot of transformation in people at a really fast rate, because it's just open and the channel's flowing. But what's fascinating about it is that, like, a lot of people, I think, haven't ever felt that before. I hadn't felt that. And my first experience seeing it, it's interesting. My experience seeing the energy that I embody was in my teacher, and he was a man. But I saw him with this holding this vibration of unconditional love and meeting people where they were at. And I was like, what on earth is that? I've never seen this before. And I want that. And I want to learn how to do that. How is he doing that? it was so amazing that I fell in love with it. And it's just like that. It really is like when you can see that, or when you can accept that, or when you can embody that, it's an amazing thing. And it comes back to that concept of like the innocence, the purity. This is not a sensual, sexual, feminine thing that's going on here. This is a pure, loving essence, which is like beyond that. It's like, it's like really, it really is quite the highest order. Yeah. Like, it's wow.
And I actually love that you mentioned that your teacher was a man, so that there was that sacred femininity, because we were going to jump into that anyway, but for you to just bring that up was just an expression of both men and women can embody this, Yeah. And this is going slightly off tangent here, but I'd read somewhere before that in order for men to step into their spiritual journey and ascend to the higher levels of consciousness, they need to embody the femininity anyway, because the femininity is about that love, it's about that intuitive aspect, and that allows us to evolve, whereas when we look at masculinity is often about constructs, about ego conditions, and it's very much, you could say, external and separated from self in some way or form.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we all have, listen, we all know this, right? We all have feminine and masculine within us. So it's not like we don't, right? It's not like men can only have masculine and women can only have feminine. We do have both. And I think it's really interesting because, you speak about, like, my teacher was a man, and that was really wonderful for me. It was an experience I needed to have, because I was used to men who were sort of verbally abusive and not kind people. So for me to see a man that held that energy was really healing for me. But I think it's really interesting when you look at sort of like across the board. And I had this conversation earlier today with somebody, and I keep saying to all the men in my life, because there are all these men that are showing up, and these beautiful souls, beautiful beautiful men with these gorgeous energies, yourself included, and it's like, I feel like at some point we kind of said, like, men are this way, women are this way, and there's no room for men to explore their feminine, their emotions.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of male clients, surprisingly, over the last year. I think I shared that with you at one point. I was kind of shocked, because originally I worked with women, and it was like, you have to work with women. But then the men started showing up, and I thought, well, who am I to say, no, men, I won't work with you because, you're not going to understand this, or you're not worthy of this, or like, I only work with women. I was like, you know what? Men have the same desires to love and be loved as women do. We all deserve that. And we all have the wounds. It's like, a lot of men have feminine wounds because of relationships with their mothers. It's like, listen, we're human. We're allowed to.
Yeah. I would even say, like, men have feminine wounds also through father as well, because suppression through the masculine can cause quite a damaged feminine. I know from myself personally, that's why I bring it up. It's just interesting that it doesn't matter where it comes from. It's there within all of us, isn't it? So,
Right. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And it's like that, I just think we're coming to a place now where we're starting to see that there's a lot more within all of us. We all have the potential, and we all at the end of the day deserve to be loved, and we want to be loved. And it's like, look, if you have a need to learn to love yourself, like, if you have low self-esteem, if you have low self-worth, if you have self-loathing, right? These patterns come from the experiences. And it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you have that in your being. And it is a strange thing, but the thing that dissolves it the fastest is always the sacred feminine, because that's the love and that's the acceptance. And I honestly think that in a lot of ways, that's what we're missing in the equation, we have all kinds of personal development and to, all these tools out there. We have all this stuff, but we have a lot. When you look at the feminine, we have a lot of embodiment. We have a lot of be sexy and be sensual and attraction and all of that. But like that's not where the purity and the innocence and the compassion and the tenderness and the intelligence, like that's a whole other side of it that I think a lot of us are missing. And that's the piece that really, like, once I found that in myself, that's when I went, wow, I can't believe that I didn't realize that I had that in me. Like, I thought I only had the other stuff. I'm super feminine, which means that I'm like the prostitute and I'm the object and I'm pretty and I'm this and I'm that. But I never thought about the compassion and the strength and the all of those sides of it being powerful. You know what I mean? It just sort of seemed like it was something that we didn't want to celebrate. Like, oh, you don't want to be like that. That's feminine, and that's like, it stinks. But it's strength, it's strength.
So my question is, and this is where I really wanted to start the deeper discussion around the feminine, the what it means to be that sacred feminine. And I'm wondering where you believe the sacred feminine has become distorted over the years, so that we can then think about, and the next question moving forward would be, so then we can move into a true, beautiful and pure embodied sacred feminine.
Right. I mean, you can see it in a nutshell why it became distorted. It became distorted because of all the stories of the sacred prostitute. I mean, it's really quite simple. What happened was, at least in my opinion, I think that there was a very obvious belief system and a very obvious story that the feminine is creative power, right, is incredibly powerful. The intuition, all of that, the priestesses, very, very powerful. The goddess is very, very powerful. And I think that probably what happened at somewhere along the way, and we can see it in the relationships, the way they painted Mary Magdalene, the way they treated the Vestal Virgins, and there's many others. It went from like equality, like equality, as in like masculine and feminine, we are equal, to inequality, as in one is good and one is bad, or one is stronger than the other, and we kind of created this hierarchy. So in an effort to kind of dumb down the feminine, then they started slapping all these titles on there, like the prostitute, the sex object. She went from equal to the gods and goddesses were equal to, basically they said, look, gods, right? God, whatever religion you're talking about, whatever point in history, you still rule, like boys rule, girls rule, right? Like you're in charge of all the amazing things. Like you are the angels and you are all this stuff. Feminine, you're going to stay on earth and you're going to make babies, right? You're about sex and you're about babies. You're here for that, and that's it. And so I think that honestly, that's what happened. That dumbed it down. That was the disrespect. That was the split. And many people will talk about how the sacred feminine was essentially like she, at one point, and I do call it like chi, like she's a force, right? It was ripped apart and it was buried. It was thrown away. It was thrown into the ocean. It was hidden in caves. It was literally buried in the Tibetan lineage. There are sacred feminine beings who are responsible for taking the information and hiding it so that people couldn't get their hands on it and objectify it and use it. We're seeing the return of that now. And I'm really excited about that. And I know for a fact that a lot of the sacred feminine teachings, a lot of the stuff that I'm responsible for, personally, that I teach, is the kind of stuff that we hid because we're like, oh shit, we don't want anybody to get their hands on this. This is really sacred. So I think that's what happened. We just kind of make it a prostitute, make her the whore. Don't let her be too powerful. We don't want anybody to know.
So where do you? So I completely relate to what you said, and I love what you mentioned there. My question is then, how do you see it distorted in the world today in terms of people wanting to embody this sacred or divine feminine?
Right, right. Well, I mean, I think that honestly, what happened is that, and I can identify with this myself, and I was just reading a book about it. Oh, it's not right. Is it right next to me? I was going to say, I'll show you the book, but it's I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah.
But it's a book about Mary and the practices. And essentially speaking, what happened was that because the story was written, and I believe this to be very, very true, because the story was written that if you just take Jesus and Mary Magdalene, but you could look at the Buddha and the Dakini, you could look at Shiva and Shakti, it's all the same. Although this is the worst, is that because the story said that, like, Jesus loved the fallen woman, right, the prostitute, we all kind of subconsciously developed this belief system that in order for us to be loved by the divine, we have to become the prostitute. So we started to kind of subconsciously embody the prostitute. We thought it was a good thing because it was like, oh, if I prostitute myself, right? If I allow myself to play this part, then God will love me. Then I'll be wanted. I know because I did this. I did this in this lifetime. I absolutely see Marilyn Monroe as an embodiment of this story. And Marilyn Monroe was not an empowered woman by any means. She was incredibly disempowered, very beautiful, and people worshipped her, but she did not own her power in any way, and that was destructive. So, I mean, I think that's a great example. Look at Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
She is it. That is a distortion of the feminine to the highest degree. That, like, cannot be like, I'm sexy, red lipstick and boobies out.
And that comes back to
enjoy your body. I'm not saying you can't.
And that comes back to one of the questions we mentioned earlier about, women when they, may go into a relationship or even online, they post beautiful, beautiful pictures of themselves, which they look incredible, no doubt. And when they look to enter a relationship, it's about looks and about, how I'm coming across or being seen, which is the external expression, obviously, rather than that beautiful, like you mentioned earlier, and we both mentioned, that elegant, beautiful soul that is within that. Because what I see, and I don't find them attracted to women, or generally who, I'm not attracted to women by their looks at all nowadays. When I connect to women, I connect to the beauty of the soul that's there, and there's a beauty that is felt and seen. And, I'll say it from a man's point of view, it turns you on. It that's beautiful, and it's,
I'm so immature. No, I understand.
But, that's the pure aspect, isn't it, of what these sacred relationships or even sacred femininity or masculinity is all about. That soul bond, and even that soul bond and relationship with self, which is beautiful, isn't it? So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, definitely. I think that, and listen, like I am guilty of having done this myself. I mean, I did it. I thought that was the best way to do it too, because I was taught that, I mean, really, I was taught this. It's not even like I'm making this up, but like, listen, you're an attractive woman, so therefore, use that to get a man to take care of you. I mean, like, literally, legitimately, that's what I was taught, and it's a good thing you're beautiful because it's going to help you make money and it's going to help you find a rich husband. Like, this is the kind of stuff that I was told, and this is the kind of stuff that I believed. I mean, I really believed this about myself, and it got so deeply embedded that it was like, so the most important thing I have to offer this world is my body, really, like my looks. That's what makes me valuable, right? Because I'm a blonde with curves, and I should really play that up because that's what people want. So it's kind of like, you kind of can't blame people for thinking that that's the right answer, because that's the way, that's what we've been taught. And it's what I believe too. And I kind of had to get smacked around a little bit, and like, literally, like, it felt like the universe, and even having like the spiritual teacher I had, it was like, wah, 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 it felt like they were like, just kind of like a little cat playing with my head, being like, hey, smacking me around a bit, going, wake up, wake up, wake up. Do you really think that this is all you have to offer? Do you really think that this is if that's not to say that being in a body and loving your body and all of that, listen, that is amazing, and I encourage it, and I do it too. I love dressing up. I love perfume and makeup. I love everything about it. But what I know now that's different than before is that I value myself enough to not give myself away or let people get their hands on something that's sacred. I think that before I treated myself like trash. I really did. Literally like trash. And I assumed that kind of that's what I was, because I didn't feel the inherent energetic worth, right? The elegance, the soul, the intelligence. I didn't see that. I couldn't see that, but I saw a really attractive lady, really pretty lady that people really liked. So it's confusing. It can be very confusing.
And it's interesting when presented with a sacred relationship or partnership, which is this beautiful soul bond that we have with many people in our soul family, whether that's soul relationship anyway, or whether it's other forms of spiritual relationships. That soul bond that brings up these issues of worth, because who are we to have this beautiful, sacred, pure relationship? I'm not deserving. Right. We could say, we are deserving. We're all deserving, which is beautiful, But how do we step into that place? Right. And for me, that's what the next question is, really. How do you then transition into this sacred, beautiful, feminine that we can all, well, women can be to start off with.
Right. Well, but men have this too. And I think that honestly, it starts with, what you need to do, at least from my experience, is that first of all, you want to recognize the patterns. I'm very big on awareness, right? I'm very big on identifying the patterns and the behaviors and the thoughts and the actions that are causing you to devalue yourself. If you want to change, it's not enough to just set the intention and do the meditation. You need to become hyper vigilant of what it is that's created this within you, because that's the only way to change it. Because what happens is, when you have a belief system and it's ingrained in your being, it's literally like a groove. It's not just a groove it's your neural pathways, it's in your cells, but it's actually a groove in your soul. And that's what the Buddhists talk about, the samskara, right? The groove in your soul. The Tibetans call it, your reincarnation, your life lessons. And it's like literally something that's very deeply ingrained in you. And so you have to make a conscious effort to want to find out what that is, why it is. And then you need to do a practice to correct it. And it's literally, it's like going in and day by day, step by step, very gently, changing it, transforming it, transmuting it by identifying what it is, by bringing it up, by clearing it out, and then by replacing it with something else. It's something I learned in neurolinguistic programming a long time ago. The best way to say it is like when you're creating something like this, you have to get very, very clear. So every single day, it's not this, but this, not this, but this. I'm not, I don't want this anymore. I want this. So that every single day you create a practice. And you literally have to train yourself to create a new groove. You have to train yourself to feel differently, to behave differently, to think differently. It's not an instant process. And I think that's like the biggest like confusion everybody has. I worked with this spiritual teacher for many, many years. And he was kind of like, when you go to like the echelon of people, this guy was like, number one, very expensive. And number two, very powerful and very good at what he did. And even that, it's not like I saw him once and he was like, like a genie, I've just cleared you of all your karma, all your beliefs, everything. You are now a transformed woman. It was like, come to the workshops, listen to what I'm saying, create your own practice, do this for yourself. It's an evolution, and it's something that you commit to, and you really have to be mindful that you want not this but this. If you want something different, you can have it, but you have to go about doing the work, and it doesn't have to be hard work, it doesn't have to hurt, but it is a conscious effort. Like every single day you have to choose yourself every day, otherwise you choose the old. The subconscious will choose it for you, and then you don't ever change, and that stinks.
It certainly does, definitely.
like rotten, like dirty feet, like dirty socks.
It's funny, like slipping back into the old patterns and conditions, and I think we all have those wounds, or we've had those wounds that pop up from time to time, and these conditions, we have the choice in those moments to either resort back or say, look, I'm going to feel it, connect with it, I'm going to allow it to flow through me, and I'm going to step into the place of where I want to be, or who I truly am, instead of repeating the patterns of the wound that was once there. So.
Right. Yeah. And the key, the trick, at least from my experience, is and this is where somebody like I come in, or an experienced person that can help you do this, is not just a lot of people identify it and they go, well, I found my pattern and I'm going to feel it and I'm going to move through it. But even that's not enough, because you have to replace it with something else. And that's where I think having the guide or the mentor or the guru, whatever you want to call it, right? That's when you want it the most, because the processing of it is maybe something you can do on your own, but the guiding to the higher levels and the process of bringing the higher levels in and down, that takes a lot of expertise. Like, that takes finesse. You can learn how to do it, and that's what I do. I teach people how to do this for themselves. But that's where the craftsmanship, that's where the artisanship comes in, because it's like, that is it's really cool once you figure it out.
Definitely.
It's like, wow, this is so freaking fun. I love this. But it isn't like it's not like something that you just automatically go, oh, I know what to do. If you do, rad, do it. But a lot of people don't, and they struggle, and it's okay. It's just that's when you want to get someone to show you, teach you, this is how you work with higher energies. This is how you transmute the stinky socks into, you want to turn your stinky socks into ruby slippers.
Definitely. And for me, like what you said there as well, for me, when we just feel it and we allow it to flow through us, that is good, in some way or form. But you could say in another way, you are just bypassing it in some way or form as well. So if you allow yourself to really feel it, get to the rawness of where that wound comes from, then work through healing it, that's when you can then step into that transformation, which is beautiful. So moving on to another question, because we're coming towards the end of the interview. How would you describe ShaktiBOMB, first of all, and how then do you work with people to step into that beautiful, sacred feminine?
Yeah, Shakti Bomb. So Shakti Bomb is my the system that I put together, right? And I call it Shakti Bomb for many, many reasons. The long and the short is that one day I was at the gym and I was exercising, and I heard this voice say, and you shall call it Shakti Bomb. And I was like, I can't call it Shakti Bomb. I can't use that. And then it was like, no, you shall, it is called Shakti Bomb. And I thought, okay, all right. But then the more I looked at it, I started to see that there was a lot of overlap of things that were SB. And I was trained by my teacher. He had a technique called the sword and the brush, which is very similar. And then it goes on and on and on. So that's where the name came from, this sort of funny little story, Shakti Bomb. And so Shakti Bomb is, a lot of times I'll describe it as, if you know anything about EFT and NLP, it's like if EFT and NLP had a baby, meaning that the EFT is designed to move the emotion through the body. The NLP is designed to work with the brain and the processing. So Shakti Bomb is a system that it's really quite simple. It works on all levels at once. So it works with your brain, it works with your body, and it works with your emotions and your soul. It teaches you how to make contact with the energy and the emotions that are stuck in your being. It teaches you how to actually make contact with it so that you can like hold on to it, so that you can actually physically move it through your body. And as you do that, it allows you to transmute it. So you can take a negative or like a really low vibration, like anger, fear, abandonment, find it, locate it, pull it up, figure out what it's doing, why it's there, release it, and then bring in a higher energy. So it's a system that removes the old, right? The stinky sock, so to speak, right? The funk. Yeah. It clears that, and then it replaces it with something else. Because if there's one thing I know that I will never ever change, is that it is a remove and a replace, a remove and a replace. I will never ever take something from somebody and leave that space empty, because if I don't, something else will come in and fill it of the same vibration. Definitely. So it's an updating process.
Love it. And
so that's how it works.
And obviously, I know you spoke about Reiki as well, and I imagine Reiki plays a huge part in that as well, in terms of bringing in and shifting energies.
Yeah, I mean, Reiki is really wonderful, because Reiki is healing energies, channeling energy, right? It's holding the vibration. Reiki is a different energy system than what Shakti Bomb is working with. Shakti Bomb is working with pure Shakti. Shakti is very hot, and it's a lot of fire energy. So I don't really know what the elements of Reiki are. I don't know how you would describe that, but it's this. Shakti is that life force energy that is super duper creative. I'm as we're chatting, speaking of Shakti, I'm gonna just grab my charger real fast.
Okay, not a problem.
Excuse me, my friends. Don't mind me. I don't want to. I know we're almost done, but I don't want it to cut. That would be a shame to cut out on you now.
It's okay, not to worry at all. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and you know.
Yeah, ask me a question while I'm doing this.
Well.
All right. Yeah.
You know, okay. It's interesting, like combining all these elements, because I believe that makes us our true selves anyway, which goes back to the earlier question, which is stepping into your true self. What it is you're all about, you know.
Right.
The soul pathway, again, I don't want to speak about my work too much, but my work is all about helping you come back to self as well, your true self and soul pathway. And in many ways, there are so many coaches and therapists and teachers that learn so many different skills, which are fantastic. You know, neurolinguistic programming, Reiki, you know, EFT. I studied them as well, which are beautiful techniques. But how do you use them in your own unique way that makes you you're powerful, your energy, that is your signature, and your Shakti Bomb, you could say. You know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, I mean, that's actually my favorite part of the way Shakti Bomb works, and the way I teach you and train you, is that when I'm working with somebody, and even when I'm training somebody to work with somebody, because I also I'm training practitioners now to use the system, it is entirely about guiding someone into their own subconscious. So what ends up happening is, the system, the mantras, the movements, the visualizations, whatever it is that we create, it comes from the client, not me, which is different than guided meditation. Because a guided meditation, it's like often see this, do this, go there, be this. Whereas this is entirely coming from your own creative power and your imagination. So the medicine that we're creating is actually coming from the client, not me. So that's my favorite part, because if it comes from you and you participate in the process in that way, if your subconscious participates,
Yeah.
it's far more likely to actually absorb the energy and the consciousness and hold on to it than if it's dictated. And so that's why I love it the most, is because I can guide somebody into their own subconscious, and their subconscious actually writes the program. I don't. And I think that's the coolest part, because it's got to come from you, whatever it is. If it's true to you, then it's real. Your subconscious doesn't need to know whether it was made up, like it was a guided, it doesn't care, right? If it believes it, if it saw it, if it felt it, it's going to take shape. And that's the coolest part. That's my favorite part.
Love it. Fantastic. Well, I think we've reached the end of the interview, and you sharing your knowledge and expertise. And it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today and getting your insight. So thank you for being here and sharing. It's been a real pleasure. So
of course, of course, my pleasure.
So, one last question: where can we find out about yourself, your work, and more about what you do?
Mm-hmm. So. In the year of 2020, it seems that Instagram really has taken over the world. So I suggest the best thing to do is find me on Instagram if you're on Instagram. My profile is at I am Katie Kozlowski. So at IamKatieKozlowski. I spell it out just in case. That's the best, and you can come find me there, follow me. There's a link there that will take you to a landing page that has all kinds of free resources on my website. And you can drop me a DM. You can, say hi to me there, and I'll get back to you. I'm very active over there. And that's really like the best. That's the hub for me now. It's Instagram. And I love meeting people there, and I just love using that medium. So I would say come find me there, please.
And what I've done also is I've created an image that has got all of your links on there. So it's got your Facebook, it's got your Instagram. I've just shown that to all the guests as well. So if you want to find out more about Katie and her work, all of her links are there as well, along with a website.
Please, yeah. I mean, you can also go to my website and all of that. But if you are on Instagram, like, drop me a DM, say hi. Follow me. I'll get back to you, and I'll be happy to tell you more about what I'm doing. And I have programs that I run, and I do some smaller workshops and trainings. And the more I teach Shakti Bomb, the more I fall in love with it. So I love to say hi to anybody that is feeling the call to Shakti Bomb in 2020.
Well, with that, I'll say thank you all for tuning in, and thank you all for listening. Thank you again, Katie, for joining me. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below this video on YouTube or even on Facebook. And I'll be sure to answer any questions you may have, and Katie will be sure to answer any questions you may have as well, because I'll be sharing the link with her. So thank you again for all tuning in, and I'll see you again very soon. With that, I will say bye for now and chat to you later.